Given the refugee situation or the immigrant situation in Europe and the emerging conservatism in Europe and the US around immigration, that media can be much more sensitive to how they represent these foreign cultures, because they're no longer foreign cultures. They're actually home. They're your neighbor. And so I think if the media doesn't take responsibility for constantly projecting the violence and the this vast cultural gap difference that that does exist but isn't insurmountable, and doesn't mean that Africans are savage because the only thing we see is rebel groups and civil war and sexual violence, and that if we start showing the other really positive, beautiful sides of Africa, that could have a very positive impact towards immigrant communities.
So I think if you're a journalist, you really need to think about who you spend time with in the country that you're reporting from.
Why is that important?
Because the people you're with, even if it's privately, they are going to shape your image of the place you're in. So if you only hang out with people who are pretty much like yourself, the image of the country is going to be colored by that.
So your advice is that journalists should socialize more with the locals?
Yeah, they should.
Yeah.
If we go away from articles and newspapers and you look at the organizations supporting Africa, when organizations support Africa, of course, the more they can tell about the difficulties of people that people are having in Africa, the more money they can get in fundraising. And you can find sometimes incredible pictures on what they are showing people to get the money they need to support people in Africa. And then sometimes I can ask, do we really need this negative picture of Africa? Is it so that we're afraid that we, as the organizations that are in solidarity with Africa, that they are maybe not going to get the support, or maybe they're not going to survive, or they won't have any job anymore, if the pictures of Africa should be so much more positive? Or if you start writing and say that within Africa people are supporting one another, they don't need support from the Western world today. That maybe can create a problem for many of the 8 organizations that you have within Europe today.
But as we can see from the Northern Africa now, that people are really taking the fates into their own hands, and they don't really trust others to tell the story about them. People can now, even if you don't have a lot of resources, it's increasingly possible for you to tell your own story. So I think that's what we need to do, that people should, instead of waiting for a story to come from somewhere else, from even a different continent, people are going to tell their own stories to each other about what's going on and what's important to them.
So then the journalist profession will, in the end, die out or something like that?
No, it will not die out, but it will change radically.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I heard a story about a Zimbabwean journalist who's based in London, and his tool of working is a list of phone numbers to regular people in Zimbabwe. And each radio show he's phoning somebody and lets them tell what's going on today. That kind of thing. I mean, he's a journalist and he's working as a journalist, but he's letting regular people tell the story. And that's very inspiring. I think that's one of the ways that we can diversify.
If you showed all the community-based organizations or the growth and development, more people could be supportive of it, instead of this idea of you need to save. And if we had more positive stories, then I think people would start to buy into them. They would start to understand them. They would have a better understanding of the situations. And if they had a better understanding of the situations, then they would be better off in assisting. So as of right now, I don't know how much of an audience there is for positive news. But I think that there is a global shift, especially among younger people and older people that have been wanting it for a long time, that they want to really know the true story, instead of this one-sided view that serves a purpose that we're not quite sure we understand.
Africa, 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 Africa.